I tweeted out during the game, Phil Parker deserves $5 million a year because they have won so many games, and we knew this before, but now we're really understanding this. They've won so many games solely because of defense and special teams. And so LeVar Woods deserves a ton of that credit too, but Phil Parker is a warrior. And I'll say this. I made the comment the other day on my show. I used to really be an advocate for Bob Stoops being the next head coach. And I would still, believe me, I wouldn't complain if Kirk Ferentz retires in the next few years and Bob Stoops is brought in. That would be great. But I'll tell you who they need to ask first. I think Phil Parker deserves consideration first. I mean, what more can the guy do to earn an opportunity to be a head coach and build a staff around him? To me, it makes sense. I'm going to go into more detail of what I think Iowa should consider once Kirk Ferentz resigns or retires. I'll go into more detail in a future segment on the show. But Phil Parker is just so impressive. And I'll be honest, they didn't give as much up through the air. Everything Ohio State got through the air was earned. C.J. Stroud, I mean, some of his throws in that second half, there's a reason why he is the best quarterback in the Big Ten, one of the best in the country. He puts that ball on the money. His receivers catch it in stride. I mean, whether we're talking about Cooper DeJean or Riley Moss, those guys actually played pretty well on Saturday. Yeah. The Iowa defense is absolutely incredible. Love Phil Parker. Think he is maybe the best coordinator in the country. And I say maybe because I really can't say that. Mark, you and I have had debates on when we say things like this when I say things like this based on not knowing every coordinator across the country. I just find it hard to find. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a coordinator that's doing what he's doing with the situation that he's in.
Absolutely.
It's just incredible. And I brought this up the other day. I love Phil Parker's personality. I think he'd be a great head coach someday. Whether or not he wants to be a head coach, he's never, I've had people say, well, he said he doesn't want to do that. He's never said that. Matter of fact, he's never said that. He was asked about it at Media Day. I was at Media Day. He did not say that he was not interested in being a head coach. Okay. That possibility is still out there. I can say this, regardless of how you feel about the 2020 offseason issues, right? You had players accusing coaches of racism. You had players accusing another coach of just being a flat-out bully. All right? And that was to a white player. Regardless of how you feel about that situation, the one guy, if we're talking about the three major coaches, I'm talking about offensive coordinator, head coach, defensive coordinator. The one guy that was never named ever that I ever found was Phil Parker. I mean, Kirk Ferentz, people love Kirk, and most players said, this wasn't Kirk that treated me this way, but he had to know that it was going on. That's what they had to say. Brian Ferentz was named as well. Chris Doyle was named as well. LeVar Woods was not. I have no reason to think LeVar Woods is not a great person, and he also happens to be a great special teams coach. But Phil Parker, I talked to multiple defensive backs following that 2020 backlash. Amari Spivey being one of them, had him on my show before the show got transitioned to YouTube. Ironically enough, I should probably throw that up on YouTube for people who haven't listened to that interview with Amari. Joe Von Johnson had him on as well. Just a couple of examples, and heard from other guys as well who commented on Phil Parker. All of them said Phil Parker made them feel like he was their second father. And, football's more than just making a guy feel warm and cuddly. But as Don Patterson has said a number of times, if you're going to be a head coach, you have to or just be a coach in general, you have to be respected, and be liked. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for the players on offense. I don't know what players, do all the players respect and like Brian Ferentz? I can't say one way or the other because I haven't spoken with him on that subject specifically. But I can tell you that Phil Parker has been liked by everyone that I've ever heard from. He has been liked by them, respected by them. And then you combine that with the fact that his team, each unit, each secondary, each defensive unit as a whole has been really good year in and year out. I don't know. I just don't know what more you can ask for from a coordinator that maybe aspires to be a head coach someday. And I'm surprised. Are you surprised that he doesn't get brought up more for head coaching vacancies? Or do you think that's more a result of the fact that he doesn't put himself out there?
He doesn't get brought up in any conversations.
Isn't that odd?
It is strange. I never considered it because I kind of run through the same names everybody else does. I don't consider myself some kind of savant when it comes to predicting head coaching hires. but he's not brought up. And you know that anytime a coach gets hired or fired here, we'll go live and we'll have 30 and 40 names brought up for a significant job. And I've never heard Phil Parker's name brought up by anybody, whether it's a fan or a credible source, ever.
And maybe we can give some credit to Kirk Ferentz because he has retained. I mean, he's got to be given credit for having retained Phil Parker. And I think most people from the outside probably recognize that, hey, he's Kirk's defensive coordinator. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I just don't even hear fans talking about it. I do think there is something to be said for when coaches continue to be brought up for these vacancies, Mark. Like, perfect example. You know who I'm thinking of right now that whose name gets brought up for other jobs almost every year?
On the Iowa staff?
No, but just in general. Big Ten guy, Big Ten head coach.
Gets brought up all the time. PJ Fleck.
Well, Fleck is one. Another guy is James Franklin.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I know you like PJ Fleck. I'm not anti PJ Fleck, but let's examine both those guys' personalities. Do you think it's a coincidence that those guys are always brought up for these vacancies, or do you think maybe, they're putting themselves out there to be brought up? I think there's some substance to that, and I think Phil Parker is the exact opposite of a guy like James Franklin. He's the exact opposite. So there's a reason why he's not being brought up. And I think that comes down to who he is as a head coach, or as a defensive coordinator, yet another reason why he appeals to me. If he ever is interested, appeals to me as the next head coach at Iowa if he wants it.